General Hospital will reveal the main content of the movie on Tuesday, March 25, 2025. First, before the press conference, Drew once again reminded Portia of his power and influence, speaking with the confidence of a man who believed he had everything under control. His tone carried a sense of superiority, as if he were warning her not to challenge him. However, in a surprising twist, Drew ended the conversation by suggesting that Portia should simply consider him a friend. The sudden shift in demeanor left Portia suspicious, sensing that behind his smile and words of friendship, something darker was at play. Left alone in the room, Portia noticed a medical file that had been left unattended. As she skimmed through the pages, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. The file contained details about Drew's neurological condition, evidence of trauma and irregular brain activity that had likely gone unnoticed or hidden from others. Portia realized that these medical findings could explain Drew's recent erratic behavior and emotional outbursts. But instead of sympathy, her mind began racing with possibilities. Knowing she couldn't act on this information alone, Portia quickly contacted Curtis and urged him to meet her. Once together, they reviewed the file in silence, both absorbing the implications of what they had discovered. The documented brain injuries painted a disturbing picture, one that aligned with the moments Drew had lost control or exhibited reckless decision-making. For Portia and Curtis, it became clear, Drew was not the stable, powerful figure he portrayed to the world. He was vulnerable, and vulnerable people could be manipulated. The realization shifted something in both of them. Where there had once been fear of Drew's influence, there was now an opportunity. Portia, ever the strategist, saw the chance to turn the situation to their advantage. Curtis, though initially hesitant, recognized that this might be the only way to protect their interests and ensure Drew no longer posed a threat to their lives or the hospital. A plan began to take shape, calculated, quiet, and laced with vengeance. Portia suggested they begin by leaking subtle hints about Drew's instability, enough to plant doubt among his allies. At the same time, Curtis would dig deeper, using his connections to uncover more about Drew's medical history and possible cover-ups. They would be patient, methodical, and untraceable. This was not just about retaliation, it was about control, and reclaiming the power they believed Drew had stolen from them. As the sun set over Port Charles, a new chapter silently began. Portia and Curtis, once cornered by Drew's dominance, were now the architects of his potential downfall. Their plan was ruthless but, in their eyes, justified. Whatever facade Drew continued to present, they knew the truth hiding beneath, and they were prepared to use it to bring him to his knees. Second, at the PCPD, Alexis arrived once again, this time requesting a private meeting with Valentine. Despite the weight of the charges against him, Valentine remained composed, fully aware that his freedom was now a distant possibility. Yet even as the walls closed in around him, there was still something he needed, something only Alexis could help him accomplish. Valentine had long accepted his fate behind bars, but his focus had shifted from survival to retribution. He refused to let Brennan walk free after the destruction he had caused. Valentine spoke with a quiet urgency, revealing just how deep Brennan's manipulation ran. The man had not only orchestrated Valentine's downfall but had driven his life into a void, stripping him of dignity, family, and allies. With his hands metaphorically tied, Valentine knew his only remaining weapon was the truth, if it could be exposed. Brennan's secrets, hidden beneath layers of deception, needed to see the light of day. And for that, Valentine needed Alexis to act on the outside, where he no longer had power. At first, Alexis listened with skepticism. She had every reason to walk away, her reputation was already fragile, and aligning herself with a man accused of multiple crimes could undo everything she had rebuilt. She questioned Valentine's motives, doubted his claims, and reminded him that he had made many enemies, some even closer than he realized. Her instincts told her to stay uninvolved, to leave the mess behind. But as Valentine laid out fragments of what Brennan had done, her hesitation began to waver. There was something in his voice, a rawness that couldn't be faked. Alexis, ever the seeker of justice, felt a familiar stir in her conscience. She had faced men like Brennan before, powerful, calculating, untouchable. If Valentine's accusations were true, Brennan posed a threat far greater than one man's ruined legacy. It was a matter of integrity, of standing up when others stayed silent. Despite every reason to decline, Alexis found herself slowly pulled into Valentine's storm. After a long silence, Alexis finally nodded, signaling her reluctant agreement. She would help, but only on her terms. She made it clear that if she discovered Valentine had lied to her, or used her as a pawn, she would abandon the mission without regret. Valentine accepted the condition without protest, knowing that her involvement was his last hope of piercing the veil around Brennan. The pact was fragile, forged not in trust, but in shared purpose. As Alexis left the interrogation room, a chill ran down her spine. She was stepping into something far more dangerous than she had anticipated, but there was no turning back. Valentine sat alone, the steel bars of the holding cell casting shadows across his face. He had lost his freedom, but he had ignited something more powerful, Alexis's sense of justice. And that, he hoped, would be enough to bring Brennan down. Third, when Jason returned to Carly's room, he found her in no mood for another lecture. The tension in the air was palpable, her expression closed off, arms crossed in defiance. She had heard enough warnings, and the last thing she wanted was another reminder of how poorly she had judged Brennan. But Jason wasn't there to coddle her emotions, he came with a harsh truth she needed to hear. He told her plainly that Brennan was far from the man she thought he was, and that staying close to him had been a dangerous mistake. His voice was sharp, almost cold, as he relayed the news. Valentine had barely escaped with his life after being shot by Brennan. Carly's reaction was immediate, anger, denial, and resentment surged all at once. She didn't want to believe that she had put herself in harm's way or that Jason, once again, was right. Her frustration boiled over, and she snapped, blaming Jason for judging her, for never trusting her instincts, and for always trying to control her life. She resented the implication that her vulnerability had led to chaos, especially now, when all she wanted was some peace. But Jason was done holding back. He had watched Carly walk into danger with her eyes wide open, ignoring every red flag and every word of caution. He was furious, not just because of the risk she had taken, but because he had nearly lost her. He couldn't understand why she had allowed herself to be charmed by someone as manipulative and lethal as Brennan. To him, her choices felt like a betrayal, not of their friendship, but of her own safety. The argument escalated with every word, neither willing to back down. Jason's fury masked the fear he still carried, and Carly's pride shielded the guilt she refused to face. Beneath their shouting was a deep sense of hurt and confusion, born from a bond that had weathered countless storms but was now strained by Carly's recklessness. Jason reminded her of the facts. Valentine bleeding out from Brennan's bullet, the lies Brennan had spun, the danger that loomed. He didn't say it out of spite, he said it because he cared, because he couldn't protect her if she kept shutting him out. But Carly, stubborn and wounded, refused to admit how close she had come to disaster. As Jason turned to leave, the silence between them was heavy. Carly stood still, jaw tight, eyes glistening with a mixture of shame and anger. Jason didn't look back, but his clenched fists said everything. This wasn't just about Brennan anymore, it was about trust, broken judgment, and the painful realization that even the strongest bonds can be tested by the choices we make. Fourth, driven by the desperate need to protect Willow from aligning herself with someone as dangerous as Drew, Nina's anxiety escalated. She feared that Michael, already pushed to his emotional limits, could spiral further if he felt betrayed, possibly leading to a bitter custody battle that could tear Wiley from Willow's life. Despite Nina's warnings, Willow remained composed and confident, believing that she could handle any legal challenge and that her relationship with Drew wouldn't cost her her son. But for Nina, that confidence felt misguided, and the consequences, potentially irreversible. Unable to shake her growing sense of dread, Nina resorted to a bold and reckless decision. With the spare key Willow had once trusted her with, she silently slipped into Drew's house under the cover of night. The room was still, the atmosphere tense with the weight of her intentions. She moved quickly to the office, her pulse racing as she approached the wall-mounted safe. It took only minutes for her to locate the hidden panel, unlock it, and pull open the heavy door. What she found inside would shift everything. Inside the safe were folders, dozens of them, meticulously organized but damning in content. Nina's hands trembled as she flipped through documents detailing off-the-books deals, forged signatures, and suspicious overseas accounts tied directly to Drew's name. The evidence pointed to a deep and sustained pattern of illegal business activities, far more extensive than she could have imagined. Her breath caught in her throat as the reality settled in. If these files were made public, Drew would almost certainly face federal charges and likely prison time. But it didn't end there. In a separate envelope, carefully tucked away behind a false panel, Nina made an even more disturbing discovery. Printed photos, intimate, private, and clearly taken without Willow's knowledge. The images captured moments between Willow and Drew in the most vulnerable of circumstances, a voyeuristic invasion that turned Nina's shock into horror. It was no longer just about crime or manipulation, it was betrayal at the most personal level, and Willow was at the center of it. Nina staggered back, the weight of the revelations pressing down on her. What began as an impulsive act to gather leverage had turned into a dark unveiling of a man she had only suspected of being dangerous. Now, she had undeniable proof, not only of criminal behavior, but of emotional exploitation that could devastate Willow if she ever saw the truth. As Nina carefully placed the documents back in order, her mind raced. This was a choice no mother should have to make, to protect her daughter's illusion of love or to destroy it for her safety. One thing was certain, if Drew had gone this far to control Willow, there was no telling what he would do next. And Nina knew that silence was no longer an option. Finally, at the PCPD, Jason entered the dimly lit interrogation room where Valentine was seated, hands cuffed and eyes weary but sharp. There was no need for pretense between them. Jason, always strategic, offered no immediate promises or threats, only a proposition. In exchange for everything Valentine knew about Brennan, he would owe him a favor. Not now, but in the future, when the stakes would likely be just as high. Valentine, knowing that his position was precarious and time was running out, weighed the offer in silence. He knew Jason wasn't a man who gave his word lightly, and in a world as dark as theirs, a favor from Jason could mean survival. Valentine leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate as he began to unravel the truth. He admitted that until the previous night, he had never seen Brennan falter. The man had always projected control, calculated, measured, untouchable. But something had cracked. Valentine had witnessed it firsthand. Brennan had nearly pulled the trigger on him, not for WSB protocol or strategic necessity, but for Carly. That deviation from cold logic was terrifying. Brennan had shown emotion, rage, jealousy, perhaps even obsession, and it revealed a weakness Valentine had never expected. It made him more dangerous, not less. For years, Brennan had appeared to be nothing more than a loyal servant of the WSB, committed to the agency above all else. But Valentine explained that this facade masked a far more complex and sinister truth. Brennan had been playing a long game, building influence, orchestrating cover-ups, manipulating both criminal and political landscapes to expand his private power. His demotion to a lower-ranking WSB position, Valentine argued, was nothing more than a contingency plan, a calculated move to shift scrutiny away from him while he operated from the shadows. To believe Brennan had truly lost control was naive. When Anna was brought in to hear Valentine's full confession, she entered the room with the composure of a seasoned agent. But as Valentine recounted every hidden connection, every crime silently enabled or executed under Brennan's watch, her calm veneer began to crack. Valentine revealed how Brennan had cultivated ties with key players in the underworld, facilitating hits, laundering money, and even authorizing assassinations under the guise of national security. Brennan's fingerprints were on more murders than Anna had ever imagined, and worse, some of them had been framed on others to maintain WSB alliances. The more Valentine spoke, the more the room grew heavy with the stench of betrayal. Each revelation unraveled years of presumed order, exposing how Brennan had operated like a puppeteer, using the WSB, private intelligence, and organized crime to shape outcomes in his favor. Anna, once a trusted colleague of Brennan's, was visibly shaken. Everything she had believed about her former superior, his loyalty, his ethics, his commitment to protecting the world from chaos, was crumbling in front of her. Valentine, with nothing left to lose, spared no detail. He painted a chilling portrait of a man who had long abandoned principle in favor of power. He confessed that Brennan had often referred to morality as a tool for the weak and viewed emotional attachments as liabilities, yet Carly had changed something in him, awakened an instability that now made him erratic and unpredictable. As Valentine's confession ended, the silence was deafening. Jason remained still, but his jaw was tight, his thoughts already racing toward action. Anna sat frozen, eyes wide with the weight of what she had just heard. The WSB had always operated in shadows, but Brennan had turned those shadows into a kingdom, and now, it was time to bring it crashing down.